You're the first one to get its face ripped out on the big screen. Just remember that.
What's going on, everybody? Republic Cinema here, and in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the old Transformers Studio series, BONECRUSHER. And I know, I already did a review on the Nest BONECRUSHER, but hey, why not do it with this guy as well? My previous review was with the Studio Series Brawl, so now it's this guy. So anyhow, BONECRUSHER was a very interesting Decepticon in the first Transformers movie, as the alternate mode he transformed into was quite odd, but in a good way. However, BONECRUSHER has seen a little bit of a bad rap in terms of figures. I don't have the original deluxe, but I'm sure it's alright, just not all that great. So when Hasbro brought in the Studio Series line in 2018, of course they had to make a Studio Series BONECRUSHER, and that they did, and hey, he looks really nice. As you can see, the Studio Series version is a huge step up to the original deluxe class, as the details are much better in terms of screen accuracy. And paint accuracy too. I believe the deluxe version had like 2 shades of the tan gray, which didn't really make much sense. So of course that was fixed with the Studio Series. Oh, and for the record, this figure is very expensive. He'll run you up to $90 with the box, and right around $60 or $70 without the box. So yeah, that's pretty expensive. I wonder if it had to do with him being in the same wave as the Studio Series 07 Optimus, as that figure gained a lot of attention with consumers, which probably led them to check out this guy, so people wanted BONECRUSHER too, in order to replicate that iconic scene from the 07 film. It's alright. For those of you who missed out on the original, there is in fact a Nest BONECRUSHER repaint from the Buzzworthy that you can order up on Amazon for $35. Sometimes when it comes to a repaint of a very hard to find figure, usually leads to bring the price and value down with the original as well. I've seen that with the original Studio Series Blackout and Studio Series Sizewipe from Dark of the Moon. I haven't paid much attention to BONECRUSHER, however, in terms of value. But anyways, without further ado, let's take a look at the figure. So starting off, painting and sculpting, pretty good. Despite this figure's release being 4 years ago, he still holds up in the present day. There seems to be a few bits and pieces of mechanical detail thrown onto the figure, as well as that head sculpt being immaculate. What would have been nice to see, however, if this guy came with an extra swappable face where it has his one eye sticking out after being brutally punched by Prime, but I suppose that was asking a bit too much. After all, this is a Voyager class we're talking about. If you are looking for a BONECRUSHER figure that has that sort of head attachment, then I'm sure you might want to check out the Masterpiece MPM BONECRUSHER, as that figure comes loaded with accessories. But of course this figure is not safe from kibble, as there's kibble all over his arms, on the back of the feet, kibble on the top of the figure, which can be positioned in a movie accurate way. Oh, and if all that kibble wasn't enough, there's also kibble under his shoulders. Odd. To be honest, however, the kibble is not too much of a big deal for the figure. At least BONECRUSHER's not one of those figures that has that problem where the kibble prevents him from moving around. Take Gamer Edition Barricade, for example. Sheesh. So thankfully, BONECRUSHER does not have that problem. And since this guy had rolling wheels, well, I mean, that doesn't really work for this figure, to be honest. The wheels are not at that position to touch the ground in order for them to spin whilst dragging this figure from side to side, so that is a bit of a missed opportunity for this guy, as he was seen roller skating across a highway. Speaking of which, during transformation, I do like how the wheels are folded in specifically in certain places in order to hold BONECRUSHER's legs in place, and they don't do a bad job at it. So quality-wise is not too bad on my copy, despite having him for 3 years. The full rotation at the shoulder movements are a little loose, but not that kind of loose. The right claw, however, that's a different story, and the knee movement is a little bit tight, but not stiff, and the quality on the head movement is, well, usual. It's nothing bad. One thing to point out, however, was that there was a little piece right here that unfortunately snapped off because I suppose it was on a weak spot. I'm curious to know if they fixed that in the Buzzworthy reissue. No, they did not. There is in fact a stress mark. That's a bummer. So yeah, I believe that's the only major quality issue for this guy. Other than that, he's pretty okay. So now, normally I would have talked about this figure's accessories, but he doesn't come with any accessories. The only thing that would probably be considered accessories would have to be his claws, which of course was the only weapon system that BONECRUSHER used against Optimus anyways, unless we're talking about Revenge of the Fallen. As in Revenge of the Fallen's, BONECRUSHER did have wrist pistols. Unfortunately, of course, Studio Series BONECRUSHER doesn't come with any of those accessories, and to add further insult to injury, there is no upgrade kit that fixes this issue, unless DNA does one. Oh, another thing to point out is that this thing actually splits open. There is no reason as to why it does that. It just, I suppose it's to extend this piece out slightly, or I guess to reference BONECRUSHER's arm extending out whilst reaching on to Optimus Prime, as both of them are falling for a split second in the movie. To be honest, who's really gonna notice that first time seeing that scene anyways? Again, it's probably just a transformation step. I confess, I haven't really paid too much attention to this bit right here. The closest thing I have to the Studio Series BONECRUSHER having a double barrel wrist blaster is by taking one of Sideswipe's pistols and just plugging them on to that port right there, and there you go. So yeah, you could probably do that if you want. I mean, that's if you have a Sideswipe figure, but it's the best I could do. I probably should do a short tutorial on that. But anyways, now I think would be a great time to move on to articulation. Starting off, there is of course this swivel joint right here, but there is a ball joint over there as well. I don't know how well you could see it though, which of course allows the head to swivel from side to side. Now for the claws, however, there is a lot of articulation involved. As to start off, there is of course a swivel joint, a hinge joint over here, and a hinge joint over here. This section that holds both of the claws moves on a hinge joint as well. This section holding this section is on a swivel joint, to which the mushroom peg that serves as a swivel joint for the section that holds this section is also on a hinge joint as well. Now if that wasn't enough, this section that holds the mushroom peg, that holds this section, that holds this section, that holds these claws over here, is on a side to side and an up and a down, and for an honorable mention, this thing is double jointed so it moves up and down. Anyways, full rotation at the arm and at the shoulder, but there is an extra shoulder joint which I believe allows an extended bend at the shoulder, bend at the elbow swivel. The entire wrist can move up and down, but of course the hand does split open. So yeah, extra finger articulation for the hands on a Voyager class figure from 2019. Unfortunately, no wrist swivel or waist swivel, but hey, at least the legs can spread, leg can move forward, can also move backwards. Oh, and these hip flaps, or whatever you call them, also move up and down. Thigh swivel, bend at the knee, and lastly, I don't know if this counts, but there is a pivot joint for the foot, which ought to be one of the most odd pieces of articulation for this figure. So yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of articulation. An interesting articulation at that. But anyways, with the articulation out of the way, we can move on to size comparison. Starting off with the Studio Series buzzworthy Bumblebee Nest repaint of BONECRUSHER, Barricade. Here he is next to Brawl, which I have recently done a review of. Be sure to check that one out. Starscream, Megatron, Blackout alongside Scorponok. Moving on to a few Autobots, here he is next to Jazz, Bumblebee, Ratchet, Ironhide, Optimus Prime. Moving on to a few fellow wave mates, here he is next to the Studio Series 27 Bumblebee. And yeah, I know that's the 01 Bumblebee. I'm just using this guy because I do in fact have 27 Bumblebee in his alternate mode and really don't feel like just transforming him. I'm just too lazy to do that. So for now, you've got this guy. This guy, it's basically the same thing. Unless you want a comparison of BONECRUSHER and 27 Bumblebee in his alternate mode. No? Sideswipe, Crane Case, and yes, BONECRUSHER and this illogical imposter are in the same wave. Here he is next to the Leader Class Dark of the Moon Megatron, and lastly, here he is next to the Studio Series Leader Class Revenge of the Fallen Jetfire. And of course, the gang's all here, minus Frenzy, but of course Frenzy will not get a core class figure anytime soon. But hey, there will be a Frenzy repaint of the Bumblebee movie core class Rumble. However, I don't think that counts. But here's the entire assortment of Wave 5, which was a loaded wave. It had 5 deluxes, making it the only Studio Series wave with 5 deluxe class figures. For the record, most of these figures you see are worth over $70 to $100, especially BONECRUSHER. This entire wave costed about a total of $260, as of how much they were at retail price in 2019. Due to inflation, this wave would have been a lot more expensive. But anyways, fellow viewers, do you think this wave was like the peak Studio Series wave? If not, let me know in the comments which one was. Now anyways, back to BONECRUSHER. Since the size comparison is over, I still think it would have been cool to see a few repaints here and there later in the future. Obviously not anytime soon, considering BONECRUSHER has had his moments twice last year. But could you imagine a Jungle Mission repaint of this guy? Just for an example. Or perhaps a Revenge of the Fallen Desert reissue. That comes with double barrel pistols for both arms. Now, if those two repaints were to exist, I would most definitely get those. But anyways, I think it's time we get down to transformation, which is not all that bad. So starting off, the best thing to do first is to have the two claws conjoin into one. The two pincers will rotate on the other side, and then the entire section will fold in to conjoin into one big claw. After that, the claw will be left on the side, as the legs are next. The waist splits apart. Much like Brawl, BONECRUSHER does have two pieces that are used for the transformation that are tiny. They simply just fold in onto the center. After that, once the entire leg is straightened out, this piece will come forward. One thing to point out is when moving upwards, this thing does stop a bit, so of course there will be some force applied to move it forward. Furthermore, the toe on the other side will fold in as well. After that, this entire section will rotate, and then this whole entire wheel section will move outwards, as well as this leg being folded down right there. Once the other side is done, the tab on the right foot will conjoin with the slot on the left foot, and to make sure this entire folded leg section doesn't move out abruptly, this piece will fold in to hold it in place. After that, it is the arm's turn to be folded in, as the arms will just simply fold in together, rotate upwards, and then fold in onto the shoulder, as well as this entire piece folding inwards as well. Once the other side of the arms are folded in, the two hands over here will appear as if they are fighting for space. So what helps best is to move them upwards like so. This entire section holding the arms will untab and fold in onto that section right there. The arms will have to be folded back where they were before though, in order for that entire process to be completed. After that, the entire arm section forms into one part of the truck mode, as well as conjoining onto the feet, and these side sections snapping in securely. After that, this entire section closes in like so. The claw can be positioned to whichever position is mostly desired. And lastly, for the transformation, the hands will just simply close in over there. They don't tab into anything, they just chill, pretty much. But anyways, here we have Studio Series BONECRUSHER in his alternate mode, and I gotta say, Hasbro did a really good job with the truck mode. It is of course accurate in both details and paint. They even designed this figure's transformation in a way where the wheels are stored diagonally on the side of the truck. Another great example of adding more detail onto the truck mode is that this piece is also here, which of course in the robot mode served as a pretty distracting piece of kibble, but of course does not seem that way in alternate mode. It does seem as if, however, it doesn't make any sense since it's under the hand right here. I believe this is supposed to serve as a ladder because this truck is pretty big in real life. I mean, in the movie, you could just see his truck mode tower over all those other SUVs. And funny enough, the claw was not supposed to be this big. Whilst filming the original 07 movie, the producers had to improvise and design their own oversized prop version of the claw, as the claw in real life is pretty small. For the record, this accessory is used to scoop out landmines once detected. Now, unfortunately, the articulation for the claw in alternate mode is a little bit of a downgrade, considering that the claw cannot move from left to right using these joints right here. But of course that is no problem, as there is a side-to-side joint right there, and at least the triple joints are still there, as well as the swivel joint. So yeah, it's not really much of a big deal for the claw articulation. Now for a quick comparison, I've decided to have him alongside someone else. Rather than Brawl, we're gonna do Barricade, because Barricade was also seen driving alongside BONECRUSHER on the freeway, although I feel like the scale's a little off. You're telling me the space to fit a human in the car mode is bigger than the space to fit a human in the truck mode for BONECRUSHER. Yeah, something's a little off there. I wonder if that was something fixed in the Masterpiece versions, because both these figures do in fact have their Masterpiece counterparts. But anyways, nice to see the two together. But anyways, here he is alongside the buzzworthy Bumblebee Nest repaint and reissue of this figure. And not gonna lie, it's kind of cool seeing both BONECRUSHERs together in their vehicle mode. I've only seen this vehicle by himself in the movie and he was pretty big. But seeing two together, now that's a completely different story. But anyways, leave a comment down below which paint variation you like more, the original or the Nest. And I think that's pretty much all I had to say for this guy. Overall, pretty solid figure, and if you can find him for a reasonable price, I'd say yoink it. But if you're planning on going the cheaper route, then there's always the Studio Series Nest BONECRUSHER. Or if you want to go a more expensive route and look for a more like premium transformation, premium articulation, better paint, better accessories, then there's always the Masterpiece MPM. But hopefully in the future, this guy does in fact get a few repaints. As previously mentioned, it would be really cool to see a green jungle mission / army camo repaint of this figure, or a Revenge of the Fallen reissue with desert sand weathering and both of his wrist blasters with an all-new mold. Then again, that might never be likely. You never know. But anyways, if you like what you saw in this video, be sure to slam that like button, share this with your friends as well, turn on post notifications so that way you don't miss another upload. Let me know how I did on this video, and most importantly, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. See ya!